All right, and we are live. Hello, welcome back to the Gumtree of Liberty podcast, episode number 28 of the live stream. I am joined today, as usual, by Drew and Centrist, and our guest for today, ForestMommy, in her return appearance on the show. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. Nice to see you all again.
It's good to see you. So, how's things been going?
In America, in the forest, things are fine. I mean, things are okay right now. I'm like, I have trepidation that shit's gonna go crazy again, but I don't know. It's summer now, so they can't really play too many games with that. So
whereabouts?
I'm in Colorado. I'm actually coming to you guys. Nice. I'm at 7,000 feet above sea level right now in Colorado. I'm coming to y'all.
Wow. And you have internet out there.
We have the internet, yes.
Very cool. I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's family property down here, but we're staying down here more and more lately just to get away. I'm in the suburbs normally, so this is where I grew up. This is where the ForestMommy name came from. So this is the first time I've ever done any podcast in the forest, so this is special. It's kind of fun.
Very cool.
Before we get started, we have some good news for you guys. It's taken many months, but finally Centrist come out of the closet. He's now libertarian, finally. We all knew it for a long time, but he's finally admitting it. It's been, one day since he came out?
We have a party?
Yes, I've come out of the closet for libertarianism. Yes, I'm pretty much on the full bet.
What did you call yourself before this? I'm curious. Why curious? Were you like curious?
I was just a centrist, man. I love balance. No, by curious. Not non-binary. No. Just a centrist that bounced around all.
A fence sitter, I think, is what centrist is trying to say.
Considering myself a libertarian through and through.
Okay.
Centrist CD is asks, when's the party?
I like to think balanced. All things balanced.
Well, you have so many good examples of good libertarians that you've met over the last 2 years, right?
Well, hopefully.
Yes.
We're all crazy over here, so it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the coming out party, I guess.
Yeah, now the party, hopefully the party will be after the election when we get some representation, big celebration.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Speaking of the election, you've been out at the stalls all week, haven't you?
I think we're losing centrist. He's libertarianism.
I've been volunteering my time at. Oh. Am I here?
You are. There's a delay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technology.
Because I'm coming. ForestMommy's got better internet than I do, and I'm in a city in Perth.
We all know how the NBA is.
So been on pre-polling. Another government fuck up.
You're volunteering with the polling and stuff, did you say? Nice. Good for you.
Yeah.
Way to get involved.
So I'll talk and then hopefully it'll flow through. I've been volunteering all week. It's been good. I've managed to convince some people over to libertarianism, which is good. Makes you feel good. We're basically trying to get the local member. It's going to be hard for the local member because the local member is entrenched in that seat. We've basically moved to our new area, and he's been there for quite a long time. Okay, I'll try and join back in if the internet's been fussy.
All right,
I'll be back.
In the meantime, how are things
see what happens.
In the meantime, how are things shaping up in Melbourne, Drew? With Dan Andrews still being in control there, he's anything on the ground changing any sort of groundswell against him? Because that'll obviously be indicative for the November election in Victoria.
Yeah, I don't sense a lot of movement in the electorate. I've always said that Victorians, Melburnians are very good at bending the knee, and Dan Andrews has managed to gaslight our people for the last couple of years, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I did notice that Albo, the opposition leader at the federal level, ForestMommy, came down to Victoria, and there was a lot of speculation whether or not he'd make an appearance with our state leader, because our state leader has had one of the worst reputations in terms of lockdowns. He's been the most authoritarian. But sure enough, they did a campaign event together, and the mud, the dirt of Dan Andrews was seen on Anthony Albanese out in public. So those birds of a feather seem to flock together. They really do. They don't mind sharing that the reputational damage that came with those terrible lockdowns that lasted so long.
So is your guys' elections for the state leaders right now? Is that what the election?
So ours is right now, it's federal, and then we've got Victoria has a state level election in November, same time as the midterms.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're not overly optimistic about both of those. At least I'm not.
Centrist is, but we aren't.
Yeah, the most we can hope for, I think, is disruptive forces in play, similar to Rand Paul. Some people in the mix who get in there and can sort of dictate the balance of power, they call it, where they have the ability to block legislation, things like that. That's what we're hoping for. So
a thorn in their side, a little thorn in their side action.
Exactly. And it's good to see people like Centrist out on the streets preaching, proselytizing, converting the masses to the ways of libertarianism. That fills my heart with joy and hope. So it's a rare thing to hear somebody doing that out there. So good on you.
Cheers. So I'm back. I'm in a new
paid either. It's all volunteer work.
Yeah, I know. But it's not like I can go to work anyway because of Mark McGowan. So
yeah, I was just gonna say you're not back to work yet, anyway. So
no.
Point taken.
So it's been an eye opener. That it's been a lot of fun. The UAP guys, the United Australia Party guys, have been awesome. They've been like setting up tents because it's been raining and stuff, like gazebo and stuff and thing, and everyone's been getting along. I think I sat down while we were waiting for people to come. We chatted with a Labor rep, a Liberal rep, the UAP, and us, and we basically decided we don't need politicians anymore. We can solve everything. So that was good fun. It worked too. We had some pretty good solutions, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think the best highlight of it has been when the whole media got trolled into thinking Clive Palmer was coming to our little stall. One of the parties, I won't say which one, was eavesdropping on a conversation, and so the UAP guy said, "Oh, are you excited about Clive Palmer coming down at 2:00?" For you that don't know who Clive Palmer is, he's the guy who runs United Australia Party. He's quite he's like a celebrity type thing. And that's then right. So then come 2:00, the papers rocked up, the opposition rocked up, all the other politicians rocked up, and no, there was no Clive Palmer. It was very amusing, very funny.
That's funny. Trick them.
But yeah, it's been good. It's actually been a lot of fun. So, which is apparently a different vibe to the other polling stations, because apparently there's been some fights and all sorts of stuff, but we all seem to get along pretty well out there, so which is good. And I've managed to convince people, which is good. I think I scored.
I was getting Lego.
Excuse me. Hang on a second, guys. Yeah, hang on. I'll mute that and I'll get him to get his Lego.
We've got a recurring theme here because we had your son turn up yesterday, Drew. Now we've got Centrists.
I've had to steal his room for the internet because the other room wasn't working. There's no lock on the door, so I can't.
Yeah, you look much better right now. Like it looks great. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm trimmed. Oh no, you're lighting. All good.
It's funny, Centrist. There's a parallel to my life. I was born into the Mormon Church. ForestMommy is probably familiar with the Latter-day Saints. They're all around the States. It's a US religion that's made its way around the world. Now, I'm not a practicing member of that religion anymore, but they're very much about going out to the streets and converting people to the ways of Mormonism. So it's interesting, that you're kind of proselytizing and converting people. I'm curious, how many people do you think you got over the line?
I've been lucky because I'm local to the area. There was a few people that was easy pickings because I've done work for them in the past. I was just like, look, these are the guys that actually care about small business. And it's the hardest part's actually just getting someone to listen. I think. Because most of the time people they just don't want to know, which is a little blackmailing. That was second day. I was a bit, no one really cares. But if you can actually sit down and have a chat with them, then you actually one of the policies the Lib Dems are pushing is to raise the tax-free threshold to 40,000, which at the moment it's 18. And it's actually ironic because that's something Larry Sharp mentioned in that roundtable, was like putting a tax-free threshold on, which is a policy that is technically an equity policy. Everyone gets the same thing, but it's going to advantage people so much more at the bottom than it will at the top. And it's a really simple policy. It's just stop taking it. You know what I mean? It's hard enough as it is to try and get the money back from the government when they do take it. Well, the easiest way to give you money back is just to not take it in the first place. So I think it's a really good policy.
I guess the only pushback I would have, and to try and think through the consequence of a policy like that, which on the surface I really think sounds great, the idea that employers would then go and reduce wages at the lower end of the spectrum. I wonder if they would take that opportunity to say, oh, you're not getting paid tax. I know, in the cash-based economy, which I'm not a part of, the government, I promise, in those sort of cash jobs, the tendency can be to say, here's your money minus the tax implications, right? That can be a common practice in those economies. So I think, I support that policy, but I think there probably will be some downward pressure. Look at me, I sound like an economist. There'll be downward pressure on incomes.
Yeah, there always is going to be, no matter which way we go. The inflation is going through the roof anyway. So I don't think any one solution is going to be perfect, but I think it's better that we don't take it in the first place. Because what Labor want to do, which is forcibly raise the minimum wage by 5%, which does, it's not a huge amount, but if the problem is they tend to forget that the people in the middle who are like your small business owners or your tradie guys who are trying to look to hire someone, that's going to make it nearly impossible. And if they've managed to survive through the COVID thing, I don't think many people who make those claims actually realize just how hard it is to take that step from sole trader, one person, to two people. It's a massive, massive step. And it's also very, very difficult in terms of responsibility because it's not just your business now, it's someone else's livelihood. And if you're just going to make it too hard to try and, if you're going to keep doing that and make it harder and harder and harder to try and keep that business rolling through the door, then it's just going to not be worth hiring people.
No, I see that you make a valid point that the impact on small business would be huge. Yeah, and I think that would be worth it in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the other thing. But once I get that policy in their ears, it tends to resonate a little bit, especially around where I live, because there's a lot of us out here are pretty much the working class. So,
well, it just sounds so a leftist ideal, right? Doesn't it? But it's also very but it's such an egalitarian approach, and it's so simple. Just keep the government out of my pocket, mate. It's so simple.
Who would have thought it'd be so easy?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's why it's easy to get people to get on board the libertarian stuff, because you're like, no, there's just this one easy point, less government, or it's so simple, and they're like, have you found talking to people, like you said, you kind of know some of the community and stuff, but have they kind of been like, oh yeah, I feel that way, I just didn't know because I thought I had to be this way or that way? I know you guys have more parties there than we do, but
we're still very much a duopoly of major parties, two parties that dominate the landscape. Red versus blue. It's the same dynamic with the minors.
Except
sort of-
inverse. Red is
Yeah.
left, blue is right.
Okay.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
And
So,
blue's
yeah,
called
supposedly.
liberal.
Yeah, it's all confusing. It's all confusing.
Because I know out here, especially if you talk to like rural people here in Colorado who have been, you know, GOP Republicans forever, but like once you start talking about libertarian stuff, they're totally on board. They just didn't like, they think because the libertarians don't win anything, there is that aspect of it. You know, they do think that. But then it's like, but you are like we all are right here, you know, and it's really easy for people to like get it.
I think it is a very easy debate, an argument to make and conversation to have. But I think that libertarians have been very effectively smeared by various forces as some kind of nefarious player in the political landscape. Especially in the US, the libertarian brand, I think, has been positioned as something, and I think it's a lot to do with the gun debate, probably more than anything. So, most people, when you say to them, wouldn't you like to be taxed less? They're like, of course, that makes complete sense, But there's also that factor of they believe government is important to create a more egalitarian redistribution of wealth. So, a lot of people just go along to get along, and especially where I live in Victoria, there's a lot of sort of tribal, sheepish thinking that just goes with the herd, and that tends to mean collectivist parties and policy.
Well, no offense to you, Drew, but Melbourne has the only Greens lower house seat in the country, so that's to be expected. I
used to be proud of that. I've been very much on a similar transition to centrist. Is that I used to be proud of the fact that we had a Greens, basically a communist at the state, running our major metropolitan seat, and that was about 10 years ago, and the trajectory of my politics has dramatically shifted since then. But
I'd challenge that a little bit, Drew. I don't think we've moved to be. I think it's that the swipe right. Sorry, Colin Wright made the meme about everyone moving further to the left. I think that's accurate, but the only problem is I think it's not just to the left; it's to the left and up, which I think it's left people like you and me who would have been left and down. Sorry, just a minute. Quick,
you're right. I mean, just on that idea, I remember buying a book back in probably 2000 and in the mid 2000s by Michael Moore called "Stupid White Men." I don't know if you're familiar with this book, but that book came out at the sort of zenith of Michael Moore's filmmaking. He just made Bowling for Columbine, or one of the bigger ones that he sent out there, and I was a Michael Moore fan, right? I loved his stuff, and I bought this book called "Stupid White Men," and I remember I found it in like a secondhand store, a copy of that book, and I'm like, I used to own this, and I looked at the title and I sort of double taked on my thinking about politics, and I'm like, that couldn't be further away from that ideal of white men being this generic source of evil now. That's kind of identitarianism. So I think I have shifted in my thinking, but I also think that the left has gone crazy. They're just going hyper speed into progressivism now, further and further.
Well, yeah. Even if you look back at even 10, a little bit more years ago, and Green's policy, they were actually pretty based. Like, it was not.
Yeah.
It's almost like they've been corrupted by the green, green industry, kind of like how the coal industry corrupts. Like it's got tariffs, but buyback, all that stuff that they do, look after each other. But yeah, it's almost like the Greens have done the same thing with the eco industry, and it sort of went away from what their traditional values were.
Yeah, it's become zealotry. It's become a religion. It's way less about saving the trees and more about installing the solar panels now. It's like it's techno focused on a certain solution, and it's very much ideologically driven. And like you said, it's about the industry of renewables and has sort of become the religion.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's all about making money, the same as anything else. That's
Yeah.
what's so funny. But they have people convinced, and it's like, if you are like anti-capitalism and all this, why are you supporting a whole new industry where we're gonna have to spend so much money, and they're not going to do it unless they're making money, you know?
That's
so
right.
It's like,
They just like the government will pay these people to grow their businesses, but it's super competitive, guys. We promise. It's like really cheap now and super competitive, but we just need the government to pay for it all. It makes no sense.
Funny. Sorry, go.
I was just going to say real quick. Yesterday, I saw on Twitter somebody made a very pertinent comment about our election, a facet of our election that is a new development. In Australia, we've got these sort of third-party independent groups running under a similar brand, the Teal team, right? Team Teal. So you know how we said it was red versus blue? All of a sudden, we've got this whole swath of teal, a lot of sort of greeny blue style independents that are all running on a climate change sort of policy. And they, in theory, they're independents, but clearly they're a part of a sort of a group and funded by some source that we believe it's Simon Holmes Court, which has funding ties back in. They were corporate raiders, his family, which is interesting. I've been digging into that, and I'm trying to think where I was going with this point. That those teals, I've gone so down the rabbit hole. Those teals are like a third force, and I had a point. God damn it! I know I had a point. What were we talking about, Centrist? What were we talking
making money off of environmentalism. That's what
That's
I
right.
said.
Yeah. So who was paying them? Who's paying the teals? There's a guy that's behind it apparently.
Simon. So we believe. Do you know that? Are you familiar with the name Simon Holmes Court? Holmes Court.
Me?
No?
It rings a bell.
Yeah. So it's big money family. The first billionaire, Australian billionaire, was a Holmes Court. He came from South Africa, and he started raiding. He's basically like one of those corporate Wall Street entities that raids companies, buys companies in distress, tears them apart, and breaks them down and makes them profitable again. Basically, automation, removing people from jobs, all that sort of sinister stuff that you see, in the Wall Street scene. And so this is where that money for those teals is coming from. Yeah. That kind of corporate raiding world, which was very interesting. I'm going to write a piece up for ALN on it, try and do some more digging into it all. But Simon Holmes Court is the son of this guy who did all that corporate raiding, and he is funding the teals. That is the research I've done so far.
So apparently, his fundraising is the reason why Zali Steagall, Helen Haynes, and Rebecca Sharkey all got re-elected or elected in the 2019 election, and they're basically the core of Teal independence now. So I'm not surprised there at all.
Yeah,
to see him being involved. To add to that money thing, which I've learned, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but at each election, if a party gets over 4% of the primary vote, they get money per number one vote. So for a Labor and Liberal, they make millions of dollars every election off the taxpayer.
Yes.
Like, people don't realise that. Like, it's millions of dollars that they get off the taxpayer to fund their thing. So that's why minor parties and independents struggle so much.
You seem surprised, Centrist, that politicians would rip off the taxpayer. It seems...
No, surprised.
I'm libertarian now.
Yeah.
I got the figures. It's $2.756 per vote.
That the politicians make that?
Yeah,
so the party gets that from the taxpayers to spend on the next election if they got over 4% of the vote last time.
Yeah,
it's a Ponzi scheme.
That's a lot of money.
I remembered what I wanted to say. I remembered. So somebody tweeted out that if the Liberal or the coalition had debated nuclear power in the 2016 or the 2019 elections, in the 2 or 3 elections past, if we had put nuclear power on the table and won that debate, we wouldn't have the teal independent movement. We wouldn't have the climate change religion entering into Australian election politics. And that's probably the biggest thing I fear right now, is they're using that issue to wedge themselves into the debate, where they'll go in and not just affect climate policy and energy policy, they'll go in and clamour for lockdown and authoritarian policy. They will go in and just rip the freedoms and liberties apart, using the climate issue as the wedge to get into the system. That's where we are, and it really is a failure of the coalition to not bring energy independence through nuclear in the debate for the last 10 years. John Howard planted a seed back in 2007, lost to Kevin Howard. Basically was Kevin Howard. Let's be honest, he was John Howard light. But John Howard tried to get it up, but failed because he knew he was gone anyway. And then they haven't tried since because they're cowards.
Do we know why they put the ban on nuclear in Australia? Well, what was the reasoning behind it?
It's a good question. Not sure.
I don't know. Is it just
fear?
Environment thing?
We have a very mixed
ignorance.
So we have a very mixed, I guess, history with nuclear. Historically speaking, we've been very much opposed to nuclear as a whole, whether it be for energy or for nuclear weapons. Having said that, when it comes to the US, we turn a blind eye to the US having nuclear weapons and nuclear power. But it mostly comes from the influence of the progressive left. So, for example, the nuclear testing grants in Australia have all been Aboriginal land, for example. So that, of course, ruffled up some feathers about that, because you're using Indigenous land for testing. So stuff like that has been used to point to how bad nuclear is, and because of that, the progressives have gotten nuclear basically banned in Australia.
It's been a very effective campaign.
Out by you guys, do they basically have, like you said, the religion of climate change? Do they basically say, if you pay more taxes, we'll fix it? Like stuff like that? Is it the same out there? Like after your fires? When were those fires? Like right before COVID, right?
Every time something like that happens. Yeah. So we just had major flooding in northeastern Australia. And, this is a story literally as old as time. One of the first stories ever told was Noah's Ark, right? But for our climate activist culture, this was an opportunity to say the sky is falling, and we need to send government funds to more climate based policy. So they
can change the climate if they just have more money,
That's right.
It's the same out here in Colorado. So obviously we have forests, pine forest, and like back in the 80s or something, they wanted to start logging, which you can responsibly log. Logging is good for forests. We are humans. We know. Resource. Yeah, we know now. You don't have to go in and clear cut. Like you have to thin stuff. Like it's a good idea, right? But the environmentalists back in like the 80s, early 90s fought against it. Okay, so all our wildland forests never got logged. Well, then disease came through. We have a thing called pine beetle, killed millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of acres of trees. It could have been a little bit more managed. I mean, there's only so much you can do to some extent, but so then there's all these dead trees. Now there's millions and millions of acres of dead trees. And so they did finally start logging then, but not enough. And then, we had a huge fire. It was like in November, which you don't normally get. It's dry here, but we don't normally get fires in November because there's no lightning and stuff. Well, it was human caused. And as soon as that, it took off, it burned a bunch of stuff down. And right away, the governor's like, oh, you see, this is why we need more money for climate change. Well, it's like, I'm an idiot. And I saw this, we all saw this problem back forever ago. And it's just sickening how they use it for that. And then it's a religion, because how can you believe that, right? You have to force yourself to believe that you can pay more money and they'll fix it. Silly.
Yeah. Same story here. They'll use every opportunity they can to push the agenda.
You could support their movement,
and unfortunately, it's being adopted across the board as well. That agenda is now sipping into the right. You've got the moderate or the left-wing faction of the Liberal Party, saying, we should have that net zero target by 2050 or whatever it is. You've got the UAP, supposedly a right-wing populist party, saying we need to get rid of all student debt. You've got right-wing parties suddenly, adopting these policies because the left uses them to get votes.
Good for votes, right?
The right follows suit. The right sees these policies are popular, and so they follow. 2019 was the election in 2019 was almost decided on climate change. I think the only reason it wasn't was because was the same-sex marriage issue, because a lot of Muslim immigrants in Sydney, for example, switched and voted Liberal instead of Labor because they're more conservative, so more consistent with Liberal Party values on marriage and the like. Same thing we've seen in the US with immigrants who are from strong traditional religious backgrounds. But it's just anything they can do to win votes, basically, because as you said, centrist, they get paid by the vote. As of 2019, if you get over 4%, you now automatically get $10,000, and then after that, any extra vote is that $2.756 per vote. So you're guaranteed funding if you hit 4% of the vote.
Yeah, it's definitely set up to benefit the two juggernauts. Whether or not it was done intentional, it's just how the system's rolled out, and that's what's happened. And it'll probably happen again. UAP is probably the best bet to match them in terms of being able to keep up with the funds and actually challenge on like an advertising scale. But the rest of us are all just doing what we can, getting by with basically volunteers like me doing it for nothing. So it's a big struggle, but I really do hope, especially in WA, I'm really hoping we get Kate in to the Senate, because I really do think she can make a bit of she's feisty. I'm pretty sure she'll hold a few of the guys accountable. So
is that the gal who had the dress on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's good. So. But anyway, so how about the numbers then? Where do you think over in Queensland and Victoria, how are you guys looking in terms of trends for the minor parties? Do you think that you're going to see them get up?
Did you want to take this one? I really
Sure.
I don't have a lot of understanding of the numbers at a high level. I know that we've got some strong players locally in David Limbrick, in particular, who's been really prominent on the federal level against the COVID mandates. So the fact that he's in the mix in Victoria is probably a good indication that there will be some level of support brewing away there. And I've recently seen them on social media, sort of their messaging is starting to improve and starting to gain traction. I think they're starting to find their feet. So I'm optimistic. Yesterday I was black pilled. Today I'm white pilled. Just talk to me on every other day in terms of Victoria. I am leaving the state for a reason, right? So I'll throw to Stu on Queensland.
So the problem we have here is, I guess, it's our fault in Queensland that you guys we have so many eccentric parties. Clive Palmer, Queensland, Pauline Hanson, Queensland, SFFP,
Bob
Queensland. Catter. Oh no, Bob Catter, not SFP. Bob Catter, Drew Pavlo, all Queensland, because we don't have a state level upper house. So you have to be eccentric to win votes, which is why you have all these crazy figures coming out of Queensland. We've got 30 seats. Lib Dems are running in 12 of the seats. And running in the Senate, they're running Campbell Newman, and I can talk for a long time about Campbell Newman and how he's a libertarian.
We'll just
but putting that aside,
we'll get into
it'll be hard for the Lib Dems to pick up.
Yeah,
it'll be hard for the Lib Dems to pick up seats in Queensland. UAP, I don't expect to do well because they've got a bad track record here. They've got a bad track record across the country. Really, One Nation is pretty good in Queensland, pretty strong. That's why Pauline Hanson is in the Senate for Queensland.
Federal.
So you will see One Nation picking up some. Will stay. For Queensland in the Senate. Yeah. So she's one of our 12. So you will see One Nation being pretty strong, but apart from that, the Greens could even pick up seats in inner city Brisbane because they've got two at state level, Indooroopilly and the one beside it, I don't remember what it's called, but they have 2 state level seats, so we could even see them picking up seats. Federally, we had a swing towards the Greens and towards Labor in the 2020 election, November 2020, in the same way that Western Australia saw that almost 20% swing in the upper house towards Labor. So if that trend is repeated, then Labor will win federally because the reason they lost, one of the reasons they lost 2019 was because Queensland was expected to go red and it went blue. Was expected to be Labor seat, and Liberals picked up more than anyone was expecting. Even Anthony Green was wrong on that, and he admitted it. So based on that, if Labor can pick up seats in Queensland, then they've won the election.
So just on Queensland, from a personal anecdote point of view, we're looking to move from the Dan Andrews hell state into a different state with less authoritarian policy. And last week I saw Anastasia announce the coercion and control policy that they'll be pushing through, which is basically another way for the government to get involved in your personal life, in your relationships, and to criminalize behavior that is less and less violent, right? So it's less and less about, are you hurting somebody? It's, are you saying mean words? Or, is this relationship unhealthy in a way that we deem unhealthy? Is that,
I disagree on that. So the policy being brought in by Palaszczuk next year will be criminalizing coercive control in relationships. So it's domestic violence stuff. So they're controlling who people who they can see, if they're controlling when they're on the internet, controlling what they eat, so that sort of stuff, manipulation and emotional harm. So I think it's it's not a good thing because it's the state doing it, but it's better than what it currently is. Because it's recognizing harm in domestic violence. It's recognizing that in domestic violence cases, harm is more than just physical; it's also emotional.
All right, libertarian, come on, let's go.
Anarchist,
this is about saying to adults, right? Remember, we're talking about adults here. We're not talking about children, right? We're saying to adults, you're not effectively managing your relationship, and so as the state, we're going to come in and tell you how to behave, or we're going to throw you in jail if you're not behaving in a way, non-violently, mind you, in a way that we deem appropriate. Now, all those things you mentioned I
agree with you on that.
Yeah, I agree. No one should tell anyone who they can and cannot see, right? But we also, when you're in a marriage or in a relationship, there's certain boundaries and certain expectations you have that, you probably shouldn't see a prostitute, for instance. There's certain boundaries that are in play that we expect from a modern relationship or a sort of civilized relationship. The idea that, that I could go to Anastasia and say, Anastasia, my wife won't let me see the prostitute. She's controlling who I can and cannot see, right? That idea, that is beyond my acceptable levels of government intervention. And
so I should clarify that what I'm talking about is, I said, it's good to see them expanding the definition of domestic violence to include emotional. But as an anarchist, I don't think they should be banning it outright because, again, it is the state doing something. So I don't think the state should be banning it. But I'm saying it's good to see that if people are finally recognizing that it's more than just physical and domestic violence problems, because that seems to be a focus that we have right now. It's just physical harm.
Okay, so words matter, right? You just said the word violence, and then you said the word, it's good that it's being expanded to include things that aren't violence, right? So let's try and keep the language. This is what gets me, is that, and again, we're playing on the left's field here. We always have to be careful about that, because they will twist language, they will gaslight us into submission every every time. And so when they say silence is violence, no, it is not. It is not violence, right? Because the slope is real, Stu. The slope is real. When we give them this, we say that emotional behavior is violence. We give them this, they'll take something else. They'll come for something else. Silence will become violence in the law, and it'll just keep going. It'll keep going. So I know this is part of my story has been I've gone through the family court system of Victoria or Australia. I'm not sure which level it's at, but I've gone through a system that is it's engineered. It's in the pillars of this system to have a bias to a gender, right? I went in that system to fight for the custody of my son when our relationship broke down. And in that system, I was accused of being a perpetrator. I was accused of being, what was the word? There was words thrown around that had no right to be there. They had no right to be on that table and in that discussion, right? But the system is incentivizing people to do it and to put people like me through the ringer who just want to raise their child, right? And
lawyers out here, lawyers do that on purpose. Well, they'll tell people to like accuse the other parent of stuff. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, my ex had the state-funded lawyer, and they sat in a room and went, "How do we get him? What can we do? Let's write it up. Let's chuck the word abuse in. How do we do that? How do we justify that?" It ended up being thrown out of court, laughed out of court. And that's a whole story that I could go into about the family court system. But the language was abused, the word abuse was abused in that case. And so I'm going to get passionate about these sort of things. And Stu, it's even making me reconsider moving to Queensland because that state is now moving in a direction that I see as deeply troubling. When they want to say violence is now expanded, that term is now expanded. So I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me.
You should go to jail if you falsely accuse someone of that during a divorce, especially during a divorce or whatever. I do not understand why people aren't going to jail when they do that, because like you said, like I know people it's fraud. I know, so like our really good neighbor, they were going through a divorce and she was playing the game, accused him of stuff, and then it all got thrown out eventually. But then it's like, why is she allowed to still be like, how her and her lawyer, why is that still allowed?
The system kind of invites that behavior by putting free representation on the table for the victim, who just always happens to be the woman or the ovary person. It's just
we're getting canceled because you said that.
Well, that's what policy did. Her policy is to go alongside the legislation all aimed at women. There's nothing aimed at men there, really. It's all either broad or it's women.
Yeah.
And even this is literally at the same time as we've seen the Johnny Depp case, where it's been admitted that he's a victim of domestic violence as a guy. Yeah. And the Queensland government under Palaszczuk goes, yeah, but that's, we're going to ignore harm against men and just focus on harm against women.
It's so interesting to see that Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial go global and the cultural aspect of it, because there's not a lot of people on Amber's side, right?
There's a handful. I've seen some, still. It's like,
yeah, but it feels like Johnny Depp is such a massive cultural icon and one of the biggest heartthrobs in the history of Hollywood, right? If not the biggest. And it's like, no, men want to be him and women want to fuck him, right? And so everyone is kind of on Team Depp for the most part, anyway. And it's interesting to watch that play out, because it is counter to the narrative that domestic violence is a one-way street, and then it's very much narrative. The narrative is it's women are victims, and so this is a wonderful thing to see this play out so globally. So yeah,
And it shows like, yeah, they may have had a bit of a toxic relationship, which whatever, but like,
totally.
yeah, it shows that he kept his like cool. I like my Miss Forest Mommy's a lot older than me and stuff, so like it's cool when they keep their cool, and we can see how like Johnny Depp, like, you know, whatever, if they're crazy, he still kept his cool and didn't like step over that line, you know.
I can't believe she shat in the bed.
See, yeah, I know, right? See, that's
So
so
mature.
crazy. It's so crazy. But in Queensland, if their relationship was in Queensland in next year, they would be facing criminal charges for their behavior because they sort of had this toxic relationship, right? And that's two adults making adult choices that are horrible choices. Don't get me wrong. They're making horrible choices, but as adults, they should be able to do whatever we should trust them to make their own choices.
I love CDs. I'm with you.
Sims.
I know, like but I get that because that happens with men a lot. They'll be with someone for a long time and then trade up or whatever you want to call it, and like, but yeah, it is sad too that we know about this and like have to talk. You know, like I don't always want someone to talk about my private relationship or something.
Yeah.
Like it sucks, but
you know what I can't fathom is how Johnny Depp has lived a life that as men, we can't even imagine, right? He's had thrown at him the amount of, female attention and admiration.
it gets old after a while. I'm sure it gets old after a while.
I do imagine, but how good must Amber Heard be to at keeping him, I don't know, satisfied, gratified, happy that he has stuck around with? That's just unfathomable.
Ironically, that's what Palaszczuk is talking about with that sort of mental abuse. But like you said, there's two adults they've chosen to have that relationship. It's on them to deal with the consequences of it. It's not the state's job to get involved.
Right.
No, I agree.
Because yeah, like you said, it'll be the slippery slope, which we all have seen the slippery slope, and and eventually it could be used for anything, you know. I mean, even now going through a divorce, a woman can say, oh, a woman who is completely dependent on and someone who pays for the house and stuff, she can say he's did something or whatever, and the cops come and remove him from the house he pays for based on nothing, and now he's got to fight that back, and yeah. So if you can go further, like. Yeah, that's not good if we're getting legislated.
Yeah, they'll expand that expanded definition of domestic violence. We can guarantee it. And it's crazy to me that this is the thing about Queensland. It's full of people like Pauline Hanson, Bob Catter, Clive Palmer, all these nutters, right? These crazy eccentric nutters who are freedom loving and eccentric. And then somehow the state government is this kind of deeply authoritarian shit show right now. It's quite a dichotomy.
Hanson and Bob Catter aren't freedom lovers. I can tell you that much. So Bob Catter supports all boys in high school being trained to use firearms by the government.
You don't support that?
But
not by the government.
But ban women from doing it.
Of course he does.
Pauline Hanson. Pauline Hanson claims to support freedom of speech, but she wants to ban wearing the burqa in Australia. So these people are only pro-freedom on certain issues.
Yeah, those are very divisive viewpoints, both of them. I wouldn't want to get into a debate on them on the show, but the idea that we should all be trained in guns, I think that's I probably support that. All of us. Right?
Yeah. Here's the question, though: at the hands of the state?
Well, I mean,
or should it be private?
It needs to be administered by some authority. I would say there needs to be some control over that. It can't just be everyone gets a gun and go and shoot stuff. Like I just don't know if we want to go to that extent just yet. But Queensland is that eccentric mix of crazy eccentrics, and then the weird state government with no Senate, which I can't even understand. They don't even have a checks and balances in their state parliament. It's crazy. It feels like unconstitutional chaos to me. Like, how do they get away with that?
So that's Bob
ForestMommy.
Catter.
Is that what he look like? What's with that hair?
He's crazy. Yeah, what's
He's got a
I'll go actually.
healthy head of hair. Healthy head of hair.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing. I'm going to go and try and find that the Thousand
quote
Blossom Bloom video. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I'm going to go try and find that for you.
The
That's
most
hilarious.
amazing quote of all time about gay marriage from Bob Catter. That really is great.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Weirdo,
It's the most amazing quote. But we're reevaluating the move. We're thinking maybe Queensland's not the destination because of that policy, that one policy. I'm thinking maybe Northern New South Wales now.
Are you guys allowed to cross state lines right now? Is that?
Yeah, we are.
Luckily, thankfully.
Yeah, it's only been 2 years, but we are now. Yeah. But so you can leave WA now, Centrist.
Yeah.
You're allowed out.
Do you think they're gonna? Didn't they extend something?
You can't get on a plane.
Didn't they extend some of the COVID stuff down there?
Yeah, our little dictator decided to extend emergency use powers to January next year.
Well, you're going into winter now, right? So do you think they'll use that? That's what I'm afraid out here. As soon as it's flu season.
I could almost make a bet. I don't know. I've been pretty good in the past, but once the election's done, mask mandates will be back. I can almost guarantee it. I reckon he'll bring mask mandates back. He'll do all this sort of crazy stuff because our numbers just keep climbing, our COVID cases. So yeah,
they're
I don't
falling?
know. We'll see what happens.
They're falling?
No, they're going up.
Yeah.
So every time they think they've hit the peak, it jumps again. But I don't know if it's people just pretending to say they've had it because you can report your own rats. And if you do it on the weekend, you can get some time off. So I don't know. I think there's probably people doing that.
There's a bunch of people this week here in Colorado that have that tested for it and have it. So it's like, whatever. Like, what are you gonna? And they're all colds. It's just cold. Yeah, I had it too. It was like nothing.
It is just a cold. I can say that because I had it a week ago, and it was a cold for a week, and I had a foggy head, and
that's not true. Did you have the shots?
Yeah, I had the shots. I had the 2 shots.
And you still got it? Did you say?
Still got it.
Thank God I had the shots, or it would have been so much worse.
Say the line.
You know what? I'm glad that I got the natural immunity. I'll say that much, right? And I'm glad that I got the Omicron variant, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to fuck with Delta. Like, I just don't want to fuck with that.
Well, that's funny. Whatever is going around now, they haven't even named this next one that's been going around here. They're just like, the numbers, like they haven't started that again.
They try to hear, this is what the Australians come up with. Son of Omicron and Flurona.
So I have a friend this week. They tested for influenza A and COVID at the same time. They have both of them. And I'm like...
we all laugh, right? But I want to ask everyone, what do we make of China right now? Because the speculation is that their behavior indicates that there's a variant out there that isn't
that they'll let out.
Well, the variant is so dangerous that they're brutalizing their people right now. That's the speculation. I would probably tend towards that they're just authoritarian fuck sticks and they can't control their ability, their controls. They can't control their inclination towards domination of their people. But that the speculation is it's dangerous again. Do you believe
you guys are much closer over there, obviously. Do you believe all the videos that have always been coming out of China?
Not all of them.
But it's hard to like.
Have we all seen the stuff with the people in the white suits recently? And
and the little like houses that they're all being like kept in and stuff.
And just a lot of brutality and violence for seemingly no reason. A lot of those videos, you're like, the guy's just standing there. Like, he's not even trying to get away. And you're, like, bashing him up with a stick. And it's like, what is happening?
You're expecting the CCP to be reasonable in how they treat people. I'm surprised by that.
I mean...
My thing is nothing comes out of China unless they want it to. So
Right.
why is it that we're seeing these videos kind of like when it first started? You know, when they first started
Well,
reporting
they're just
people, they were
dropping in the
just-
streets.
which
Yeah, and I'm
didn't
like, I
happen.
don't
It was
believe
bullshit.
that. I don't believe it.
And then they were talking about welding people inside doors. Did it even happen? Was it just a video? I don't know. The propaganda over the last 2 and a bit years has been insane from every single political outlet. So I'm not saying that people in China aren't suffering. They probably are.
Right.
But
Yeah,
is
they
it
are.
what's actually being released by the government? Or are they trying to scare people into thinking there's another deadly virus coming around and we're going to start shutting down again? I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to tell because it's just so much.
My instinct is that the Communist Party wants to restore their reputation, and that's their major motivational driver.
So then the videos aren't real?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the thing. I don't understand it.
That's what I mean.
I don't get it. Like, why is that? It doesn't work that if they were restoring their reputation, they'd be showing themselves to be so brutally authoritarian. But it is, unless their real motivation is to not let this thing out again, right? That what is bottled up there is going to cause another global catastrophe.
The labs weren't shut down, right? The labs are still operational and funded by America over there in Wuhan, right?
I imagine so. I mean, the Ukraine labs are probably firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, like
so. Hunter Biden's over there collecting checks. It's all happening.
everything's so screwed up.
It really is, isn't it?
It's so
It's
weird.
like someone's like been doing like like when they look into the sky and they try and find things and like they randomly hit a comet. It's like someone's doing that with a flashlight and like all of a sudden we've hit all the information coming out from the political side after the last 2 years and gone, whoa, a head explode type. It's getting crazy out there.
I've got the I've got that Bob Catter clip.
Oh yeah.
All right. So speaking of crazy,
yeah.
Well, let's hope this audio works.
And a final observation on the same-sex marriage debate from Bob Catter.
I mean, people are entitled to their sexual proclivities. I mean, let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned. But I ain't spending any time on it because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
So we should put the whole country on hold to
on a dime. He's just on a dime. I love it. It's like
He's an interesting looking person.
Let 1,000 blossoms bloom, but I ain't spending any time on it. That is Bob Catter to a T right there. It's a wonderful.
He's also about Biden's age as well. I'm pretty sure he's like only a few years younger than Biden as well. So he's at the same age. They're both crazy in their own ways.
Was he in government for a long time too, or
he's been here for a while, right? I want to say at least 20.
Yeah, he's
20,
been.
30 years.
So he's held his current seat for 30 years.
Wow.
He's been in politics since Jorge Peterson, so 1970s.
Wow. Crazy. He's got more
It's like
of his
50
marbles
years.
than he's got more of his marbles than Joe Biden. We can say that. Like, he's sharper. He's way sharper than Joe Biden is. Like, I don't know how the fuck you guys elected a mental patient. I don't know what the fuck is going on there.
No matter who.
That doesn't signal the downfall of the great
and
republic.
people are
I don't
okay
know what
with
that-
it. Like I used to work in elder care, and he literally acts like some of the people that would be in the memory care units and stuff. And I'm like, how are people just like okay with this?
But it's not Trump, right? It's
exactly. There's no mean tweets. There's tweets about like the economy that if you want to fix inflation, you just tax people more. Duh. But
like, that's right. Gavin Newsom. Are we going to talk about that? Are we going to talk about Gavin Newsom's
we can touch
brilliant?
on it. I think while we hit America, we should really touch on the Rand Paul blocking the Ukraine bill and the fact that nearly every single Democrat voted for it. so Rand Paul's more anti-war left as a Republican than what the whole Democratic Party is, including AOC.
They have people so like they have people so messed up too, because you're having all these regular leftists like, why is Rand Paul blocking it? And it's like, because it's for war that we don't need to be a part of, and we all know, like every corporate everything, the money's not going to the people. The money's going to be, and the way they've been going over there with Pelosi, Joe Biden, and the U2 concert, I'm like, what? They're being so obviously like fake about it, and people are like, well, yeah, they need that money, and it's
it's like the Ukraine war is a timeshare or something. It's like a holiday destination. They're just going over and hanging out.
Are they even at war then? Like,
I know, but Pelosi was scared for her. Pelosi was scared for her life on January 6th, but then she's flying to an active war zone. Come on.
It's next level insane, man. I don't know how they keep a straight face.
The word around is that Rand Paul only wanted one thing, or that his objective was to get some oversight. An inspector general, I think, is the word they were using. Yeah. So they're saying Rand Paul wants somebody who can hold the money and keep account of how it's spent. That's all he wanted. Right, that's what they're saying. And
accounting's
like,
bad. You shouldn't account for $40 billion.
bro. No, you can't expect accountability, bro. No, we're just gonna give it. We're just gonna send them a check for $40 billion. They're gonna do whatever the fuck they want with it. And it's like, what? It's just insane.
And just like not even that long ago, they were saying that like 40 billion-ish would like solve world hunger. The UN was saying that about Elon. So it's like, oh, okay. That's more amazing. The most, like, obviously the government, and I'm glad Rand Paul is doing what he did, and he's standing up for that. In my heart, I'm like, yeah, I love Massey, I love Paul, I love MTG, but like in the end, what can they really do? They can try and block stuff, but we're so far gone. But like, how are all these people pro-war now, or not even understanding? Like, we don't know exactly what's going on over there, right? Like, B, like, how are you pro-war? Like, you're literally saying, yeah, we need to give them more weapons and stuff. And,
what I think, just quickly, what I think set the left on the pro-war or not protesting, I guess, war anymore was Obama. That's what I think it was. The fact that Obama took over from Bush saying, I'm not going to end the war in Iraq, and then just proceeded to start bombing brown babies with drone strikes left, right, and center, and ran out of bombs officially. Like, he bombed Afghanistan and Iraq so much that the military ran out of bombs. That's a real thing you can look up.
It was like 20 years of war, 20 plus years of war. So it normalized it for sure.
So, for them, they're like, they're God, they're almighty Obama, they're, the savior that he was pro-war. And so they're like, well, I guess we like war now. I guess we're just a permanent war state. It's so weird.
I think we underestimate I'll call it a psyop, whether it is or not, it's another matter. But the whole past 6 years of labeling every single thing far right and Nazi has dulled people down to the fact that they are literally funding a far right organization that are literally Nazis because they think Putin is the Nazi. I'm like fuck Putin. Like, I don't like his government system either. He's a bad dude. But I'm not sending my tax dollars to him. I'm funding a guy who's actually got a white swastika tattoo on his arm. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like,
Well, when you saw on Twitter and online when they were going so heavy right away at the Ukraine flag, it's like, like you say, PSYOP or whatever. It was like they were a transmission. Me and a friend out here, they call them like they received transmissions basically, and that was a transmission. Like, Ukraine good, even though that like most of them are actual legitimate Nazis, but
and we also know that the sons of people like Joe Biden, and I want to say Kerry, John Kerry, their children have made money out of Ukraine. We know this. right? And so it like we talked about things just being ultra weird and fucked up. Like it just boggles the mind how bad that is. Like there's no disguising it. It's just corruption front and center. And I was saying this the other day. It's like proxy wars used to be something that we kind of did quietly. You know, the CIA's in Afghanistan. Don't talk about
50 years. America was over there for 50 years doing proxy wars.
Yeah. It was kind of like no one. It's not officially a war. They're just fucking around over there. It's just the CIA. Don't worry about it. And now it's openly celebrated that we're fighting a proxy war against Russia.
Under the guise of democracy, with one of the most corrupt governments, the corrupt democracy we've ever seen. I'm like, it's insane. People are like, no, you got to stand up for democracy. I'm like, it's not a democracy. Like, not even Australia is a democracy anymore.
Does everybody know Zelensky's backstory? How
he was like an actor and a comedian, right?
He played a role as the president of the Ukraine in a TV show, like I can't remember the one in the States you had where you West Wing. It was like a West Wing show, and Zelensky played the president, right? And funnily enough, the guy who funded that TV production went on to fund his political campaign to become president of Ukraine.
It's so weird, man.
You want to talk about a great strategy for becoming president of a country? That's your pathway. Like that.
Be an actor or something, yeah. Get placed.
Play the president in a fictional way, and then go and run for actual office. It's astounding.
It's just so weird, man. Like this timeline, like it can't be real. Like it's like does my head in. Like it can't be real. Like it's just so absurd.
Have we got any white pills
must
to
be
end the show?
Simulation theory or whatever it is.
Who's got some white pills to end the show with? We need some white pills. Who's got anybody? I mean, Rand Paul blocking the Ukraine bill that's a white pill, right?
Yeah, even if it wasn't for the best intentions, it's still at least stopping it, forcing the vote on it.
And that's kind of what I'm hoping for from our federal election is that we get a lightning rod like Rand Paul in Australian Parliament. That's what we need.
It's David. To be honest, if David Limbrick gets up in Victoria, then we're going to see a change in mindset. He is one of, and I'm actually confident that he'll get in. He has been one of the most consistent, principled politicians throughout the whole thing. I haven't seen him I want to say make a mistake, but do you know what I mean? Like hasn't backtracked any of his positions. Like he went out in support to go talk to people at the BLM, not rights, they weren't rights here, they were protests, during those protests. And then he went out with the things. He's been principled, he's listened to his constituents. He, I think, is going to be our Rand Paul / Thomas Massey, libertarian in amongst the Liberals and Labor, which I'm really hoping.
Just someone to speak up. Someone to just speak up. That's like I said, will there anything change with Massey or Rand Paul or MTG? I don't know, but at least they speak up. At least MTG was they're secretly voting. They're not reading anything. Just people who will speak up.
Oh, who was there was a guy that he did a speech. I can't remember. I just watched it this morning in America. He was talking about how big the bill is, and he's like, I've got a team of 6 people trying to read it, and you want to vote on it now? I'm trying to get it abstained so I can actually read the bill before I can vote on it. That sort of stuff is just But if we can get Kate in with David, if we can get Kate representing WA, I think it will be. I think those two will really put a cracker up. What's going on in Canberra? And fingers crossed we can get them in there. So, if you're in WA and you're watching, vote Kate number 1 in the Senate, please. Put whoever else you want.
I'm going to go and donate to both their campaigns.
When's the vote tomorrow? When's the official vote?
Next Saturday.
21st.
In a week. Okay.
Elections are always Saturday over here, which is good because it's mandatory. So it means you don't have to skip out on work to go vote. You do it on your weekend.
Actually, you know what?
It'd be so much easier if you could just mail it from home. Then you can.
That'd actually be a policy that no party runs on, which I'm surprised we don't. Like the Lib Dems haven't. But if you run on voluntary voting, I reckon you would get the biggest turnout of the people who do donkeys and stuff. Because so many people are like, I don't want to do this. But that's one of the things you see. I had one guy ask me if it was a federal or a state election. That's the level of apathy in the community about voting for politics.
Zero.
So that was very blackpilling. I was like, oh my God, we're doomed. But I reckon if you could get a campaign out saying, hey, we want to make voting voluntary, I think you'd get a lot of people go, oh, that's a good idea. Then I don't have to do it again.
So the original reason for bringing in compulsory voting was, low vote turnouts, especially post World War One. So it was meant to be a temporary measure to help boost voter turnouts. And we all know how that goes when the government does something temporary. It ends up being permanent. It's now 100 years. I think it was 1924 at a federal level. Queensland was the first 1915 during World War One. So, and that was only 14 years after Federation. So, within 14 years of being formed, we was bringing compulsory voting. And we're the only Western democracy to have it for all ages and have it enforced. Brazil, I think, after 70, you don't have to. It's not compulsory, and in Belgium, it's not enforced. We're the only Western democracy to have mandatory voting and enforced with fines.
Says it all, really, doesn't it? Says it all about our country. You
and
must.
Of course, you can't vote. No, you can't vote none of the above either. So
you must participate in your democratic freedom.
Yeah,
you must.
I would really interesting to see the numbers this year, because obviously some of the polls have been showing waning support for the two major parties, because obviously the polls are set up to benefit the major parties. But there's been waning support, but I'd like to really see the number of people who put in, how many dead ballots we get this year. Wouldn't be. I've seen so many people walk in, walk out. I wouldn't be surprised. They check the name off, go in, and just screw a line through it, and then put it in the ballot box. So those numbers, I'd be really interested to see how it goes at the end. So
here's a white pill for you for Colorado. Can I give you a white pill real quick? In Colorado, I think we have 81 libertarians that will be running in the next couple races. Shit around this or stuff around the state. So that's good.
Nice.
Yeah. Very good.
Nice.
So apparently we've had 2.5 million people apply for a postal vote so far. 60% higher than the same time in 2019. In 2019 overall, 40% were pre-poll or postal, I'm pretty sure. And according to
it's handy. It's handy, but it's also really easy to cheat with it.
According to figures from The Guardian, 1.2 million people have already voted before the election with postal voting. That's after 4 days of voting. 1.2 million of 17 million. The seats. So the seat with the most pre-polls is a safe national seat, and the next three are marginal seats in New South Wales, which is interesting. No comment there, but they're all marginal seats.
On our pre-poll, which is just in our little suburb, we had the first day was 700 and something. The second day was 700 and something. The third day, when it was raining and crappy, was still 600. And then I believe we've been averaging roughly 700 a day over the past 5 days. That's a lot of people. It's not, people aren't doing it because normally pre-polling is supposed to be like if you are going to be away or if you can't make it or you feel you're worried about thing, but people are just coming to do it. I don't know, a lot of people wearing masks too, so that's not a good idea. It's a good sign, but it's definitely a whole lot higher numbers than I think we've seen before. Well, according to the guys anyway. So.
The Australian Electoral Commission is saying that we could expect half of all votes cast to be pre-poll or postal.
Yeah, Matt was the guy on the UAP guys across it all, the campaign manager for the area for the UAP, was saying that they were estimating 60% were going to be voting pre-poll. That's very
interesting as well, because usually it's 3 weeks for postal and pre-poll, but thanks to the changes made last year by the government and Labor unanimously to the electoral rules, it's only 12 days of pre-poll postal voting. So it's gone from 21 to 12, and we're seeing more votes done never before pre-poll postal.
It's going to be interesting. Saturday's going to be
Yeah.
intense.
So come Sunday morning, we'll have the podcast, and we'll either be really black-pilled or maybe a few white pills. Who knows? Let's see.
I don't. It depends if I make it on Sunday, because we got the Saturday live stream as well that night. So if it looks like it's going bad, I might be too hungover to get up and do the show. But we'll see.
I think we need to do a drinking game on Saturday night for the election of some sort.
I don't want to embarrass myself that much.
Come on, we can make it a good drinking game. If a Lib Dem or a Freedom candidate gets in, you have a shot or something. I don't know. There probably won't be many shots. But...
So you'll be dry?
Yeah.
No, we're gonna get a few in. The Senate's gonna be fruitful. I'm pretty sure. I think, as like I said, Limbrick, I think, is going to walk it in. I think he'll get enough of the vote to get into the Senate, and I really do think Kate should as well. Fingers crossed.
All right, fingers crossed.
The Lib Dems already have a senator now because one of the liberal senators across the floor joined Lib Dems.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't think I'll go find the stuff. I'll go find that now. I don't think he's up. I don't think he's actually up for election though. But I think he was liberal across the floor.
Yeah, well, there's a few that have left there to do that as well, because of the mismanagement from the Liberals. But that's been funny. The banter between the Liberal and Labor at the stall has been good. Like the Labor guys are having to go at them about inflation. I'm like, oh yeah, so you're going to solve it by spending more money? Fucking idiots.
So Sam McMahon, who was the country Liberal senator for Northern Territory, so there's an ACT and a country Liberal. And then McMahon resigned, went independent, and then he joined Lib Dems. And I don't think he's up for election. So that means Lib Dems are guaranteed one senator post-election. No, he's up for election. It's Northern Territory. So chances are he'll lose because it's Northern Territory. So you only get 2 senators, not 6 at each election.
Cool.
But that's a white pill at the end, isn't it? Right there, that's good.
Careful.
Right. Where can people find you, ForestMommy?
On pretty much just on YouTube, it's ForestMommy on YouTube, and then on Twitter, it's the Desert Daddy at the Desert Daddy or Terminator Mommy. I have so many names right now. I prefer ForestMommy. What?
Did you check to see if they reinstated your account?
No, I asked again, and they were like, "Nope." I'll keep trying, but yeah, they're like, it was too violent or something. It still says it was violent. I'm like, okay. It was just a picture. It was a nude picture, but that's violence, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
Who knows?
It's not all women have boobs now. So.
That's true.
All right, and as Centrist said, we will be doing a election night live stream, which will be Saturday the 21st of May at, doing the math in my head, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is 4 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time US.
Would it be because it's 8? We started this 8 a.m. your time and it was 6 p.m. my time. So if it's 6 p.m. your time, maybe it'll be 8 a.m. my time.
Is that how it works?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, but you're not. Oh, sorry, I'm convened to Eastern.
Yeah,
I'm convened to Eastern Daylight.
I don't know.
All right.
No, it should be good.
And then we're doing a post-show Sunday morning as well. I don't know who we'll have for that because we'll all be exhausted from Saturday nights. But fingers crossed we'll have a post-show summary wrap-up on Sunday morning as well. Saturday night US time. Other than that,
all right, well,
we'll hopefully see you guys next weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, thank you again.
See you guys.